Here's the thing, the ultimate power isn't in making him suffer. It's in showing him that your life doesn't revolve around him. When you stop reacting, stop chasing, and simply move forward, that's when he feels the pain he never saw coming. When you think about it, most people dramatically underestimate the power of silence, especially in relationships where emotions are running high. We're conditioned to believe that if someone has hurt us or disappointed us, the natural response is to react, whether that's confronting them, arguing, or even seeking validation by getting a reaction. But the truth is, nothing is more disarming, more powerful, and more subtly painful than choosing not to engage at all. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding into the very dynamics that gave them power over you. Your silence, your composed distance, communicates more than words ever could, and it does it in a way that is impossible for them to control or counter. When someone has expected a certain pattern from you, texts at all hours, emotional availability, immediate responses, attention, you disrupt that pattern by simply being quiet. You remove yourself from their expectations, and here's the beauty of it. They notice it immediately, even if they try to pretend they don't. People are wired to respond to attention and validation, and when you withhold it, it creates a subtle, almost invisible tension that they can't easily ignore. You're not yelling, you're not retaliating, you're not making a scene. You're simply existing outside of their influence, and that is both disarming and deeply unsettling for someone who assumed they still had a place at the center of your emotional world. Silence in this context is not passive, it is an active, deliberate choice. It's a conscious decision to protect your peace, to regain control over your own emotions, and to refuse to let someone else dictate how you feel. When you engage emotionally with someone who has hurt you, you're often playing their game, reacting on their terms. But when you step back and choose silence, you shift the power entirely. Suddenly, they are left in a vacuum they didn't anticipate, forced to confront the reality that they no longer have the influence they once assumed. Your calm and quiet presence or absence, in this case, becomes louder than any words you could ever say. It's also important to understand that this silence is not about punishment or revenge. It's about clarity and self-respect. By choosing not to react, you're not stooping to bitterness or anger. You're not trying to make them feel guilty. You're simply showing that your emotional well-being does not depend on their behavior. That is what truly stings for someone who expected to have control over your feelings. They may have imagined that your attention, your emotions, and your energy were theirs to command, but when you withdraw and remain composed, you break that assumption entirely. And breaking someone's assumptions about you is often more powerful than any argument or confrontation could ever be. There's also an almost magnetic quality to this type of silence. When someone is used to a constant reaction, a sudden absence creates curiosity, doubt, and reflection. They start replaying interactions, analyzing what they might have done wrong, and wondering why you no longer respond. That mental loop is far more painful than anything you could say directly, because it forces them to face the consequences of their own actions internally. Your quiet composure becomes the unspoken message. You are untouchable, your peace is intact, and your life moves forward without them. Finally, silence gives you the space to reconnect with yourself. In the absence of constant emotional engagement with someone who may have caused you pain, you regain perspective. You start making decisions based on your desires, your ambitions, and your happiness, rather than on the need to prove something to them. And that, in itself, is transformative. Your silence speaks volumes not only to them but to you, reminding you that your power, your value, and your peace are never determined by anyone else. One of the most overlooked truths in relationships is how much people take for granted what is always available to them. When someone assumes your attention, your presence, and your emotional energy are constants in their life, they rarely stop to appreciate them. They get used to them, and the moment they are gone, they're suddenly faced with a void they never expected. That is exactly why the strategy of stepping back and acting like he no longer exists is so devastating in the most silent and powerful way. By removing yourself from his orbit, by refusing to be so easily reached or emotionally accessible, you create an absence that he feels immediately, even if he doesn't fully understand why it hurts so much. He won't miss what he can't touch, and that simple fact is what turns the tables entirely. When someone has been used to having constant access to you, there's an unspoken sense of control that comes with it. He assumes that no matter what he does, your attention is guaranteed. He may have ignored your boundaries, dismissed your feelings, or acted carelessly because he believed you would always be there. But when you remove that access, suddenly the control he thought he had is gone. He is left confronted with a reality where his usual tactics, texts, calls, attempts to provoke a reaction, fail. And when those patterns fail, it produces a quiet but undeniable sense of panic. That is the pain he never expected, the discomfort that comes not from confrontation, argument, or shame, but from realizing that he no longer has the influence he took for granted. This absence works on a deeper level than most people realize, because it forces him to reflect on his own actions. When someone has always had you available, they rarely stop to think about how their behavior affects you. But when that availability disappears, he is left to fill in the blanks. He starts replaying moments, questioning choices, wondering if he missed the chance to show he valued you. He might not reach out, and he might not admit it even to himself, but internally he is forced to recognize the weight of your absence. And the more he cannot reach you, the more potent that realization becomes. There's also a fundamental human psychology at play here. We crave what feels unattainable. If something or someone is easily accessible, we often undervalue it. But when access is restricted, scarcity makes desire sharper. By stepping back, you aren't just creating distance physically or emotionally. You are creating a sense of value and importance that he can't touch. You are no longer a convenient presence. You are a meaningful absence, and that shift in perception is far more impactful than any confrontation or argument could be. It's critical to understand that this isn't about manipulation. It isn't about playing games or trying to make him jealous. It's about reclaiming your emotional autonomy and setting boundaries. By limiting access to your attention and energy, you communicate that your life is independent of his choices or presence. Your peace and your joy are not negotiable. That quiet, firm boundary forces him to realize that if he wanted to be a part of your life, he had to earn it, and the reality is, he may have already lost that chance through his own actions. Finally, by making yourself untouchable, you create space to nurture your own growth. You invest your energy in people and experiences that reciprocate your attention and value your presence. And the irony of it is that while you are thriving and moving forward, he is left in a place of longing and reflection, quietly recognizing the significance of someone he once assumed was always within reach. In that way, the very act of stepping back, of becoming untouchable, becomes a profound statement. The things he failed to cherish now exist beyond his grasp, and that is the most silent, effective form of power you can possess. One of the most powerful lessons in emotional resilience and self-empowerment is learning that your life doesn't stop for anyone. Too often, people cling to the idea that someone who hurt them or failed to appreciate them should remain central to their world. They wait, they hope, they invest energy in thoughts about the person, all while putting their own ambitions, passions, and happiness on hold. But the moment you stop revolving your life around him, you reclaim your freedom, and without even trying, you demonstrate a form of pain that is far more impactful than confrontation or revenge. When your life moves forward without him, it's a quiet yet undeniable message. Your happiness does not depend on his choices, and your value cannot be dictated by his recognition. Moving forward doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending nothing happened. It's about redirecting focus. Every project you pursue, every goal you chase, every friendship you nurture, and every experience you embrace sends a subtle but profound signal. You are showing that your existence is rich, vibrant, and complete on your own terms. And for someone who believed they had influence over your happiness, that realization is disarming. They are suddenly confronted with a version of you that is thriving, independent, and unshakable, and it highlights the opportunity they lost without needing a single word from you. When someone has hurt you or taken you for granted, there's often an expectation that you will linger in disappointment or sadness. That expectation gives them comfort because it reassures them that they still matter to your emotional world. But the moment you move forward, that assumption shatters. Your growth becomes a mirror reflecting what they failed to nurture. By thriving, you are not seeking to make them feel guilty. You are simply living in a way that honors your own worth. And it's this thriving that creates a subtle sting, the kind that is more reflective and enduring than momentary remorse, because it forces them to acknowledge that they are no longer central to the story of your life. There's also a psychological truth at play here. Absence combined with visible progress amplifies desire and reflection. People are drawn to what they see evolving and flourishing, especially when they are aware that they no longer hold a role in that evolution. Every success you achieve, every smile you share, and every milestone you reach quietly communicates that you are not waiting, not dwelling, and not dependent. That energy, that forward motion, becomes magnetic and simultaneously painful for someone who once assumed you would always revolve around them. Your momentum highlights their own inaction, and it forces them to confront the reality of what they let slip away. It's important to note that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean ignoring your emotions or denying your past. It means choosing to invest your energy where it produces growth, joy, and fulfillment. It's a conscious decision to prioritize your world over someone else's whims or mistakes. By focusing on your passions, friendships, and self-development, you reclaim your time and attention. And in doing so, you take back the power that was quietly being eroded whenever your focus was on him instead of yourself. Ultimately, when your life moves forward without him, you embody a truth that words cannot capture. Your happiness is independent, your value is unwavering, and your presence in the world is intentional, and for him, witnessing that independent existence is far more powerful than any argument, any confrontation, or any attempt at proving him wrong. The pain he experiences is not from being confronted or criticized. It's from seeing someone he once assumed was under his influence thrive in a life where he no longer has access. And that, more than anything else, is a lesson in subtle yet absolute power, the kind of power that comes from living fully, unapologetically, and without waiting for anyone's validation. One of the most transformative realizations in relationships and emotional growth is understanding where your true power lies. So often, people give it away without even realizing it. We hand over our peace, our attention, and our emotional energy to someone else, allowing their choices, actions, or moods to dictate how we feel. But the moment you act like he never existed, you reclaim the control that was never truly his to hold in the first place. Taking back your power isn't about revenge or trying to make him feel guilty. It's about centering yourself, prioritizing your happiness, and refusing to allow someone else's behavior to define your worth. It's about saying quietly, but powerfully, that your life moves on your terms, not theirs. When someone has hurt you, there's a natural temptation to try to fix things, to explain yourself, or to seek validation. But every time you do that, you are effectively handing over pieces of your power. You are giving them leverage over your emotional state, letting them control how you feel and how you react. The real shift happens when you decide to stop feeding into that dynamic entirely. You step back, you stop reacting, you stop seeking approval. In doing so, you take your power out of their hands and put it squarely where it belongs, with you. That is a profound and liberating act, because it changes the relationship entirely without you having to say a word. Power is quiet. Power doesn't have to be loud, dramatic, or confrontational. In fact, it is most effective when it is subtle, calm, and unshakable. By choosing not to engage with someone who has hurt you, you create an undeniable presence of strength. You demonstrate that your emotions, your time, and your energy are yours to manage. He may have assumed he could provoke reactions, influence your feelings, or manipulate your attention, but when you refuse to give him that access, he is left powerless. That frustration, that discomfort, is the natural consequence of you reclaiming what was always yours. Taking back your power also involves setting boundaries and making conscious choices about where your energy goes. You no longer allow his behavior to dictate your moods or your decisions. You stop overanalyzing what he's thinking, you stop replaying the past, and you stop giving importance to actions that do not serve your well-being. Your focus shifts entirely to yourself, your growth, your happiness, and your goals. And in this shift, something remarkable happens. You become untouchable. Your peace is no longer negotiable, and that is something someone who underestimated you can never fully comprehend. This act of reclaiming your power has a ripple effect. By prioritizing yourself, you inspire others to treat you with the respect and consideration you deserve. You demonstrate that your boundaries are firm, your self-worth is intact, and your happiness cannot be compromised by someone else's mistakes or indifference. And the quiet irony is that the very person who caused you pain feels the impact of this power most acutely. They assumed they had influence over your emotions, but in stepping back and refusing to react, you prove that their assumptions were wrong. They are confronted not by anger, not by confrontation, but by your unshakable autonomy and the reality that you are thriving independently of them. Ultimately, taking back your power is a process of self-liberation. It's about choosing to live fully on your terms, to reclaim your emotional sovereignty, and to refuse to allow someone else's choices or mistakes to define your state of mind. When you act like he never existed, you embody a quiet authority that is undeniable, irresistible, and transformative. That authority doesn't come from trying to hurt him. It comes from embracing your own value, protecting your peace, and refusing to allow anyone else to hold the keys to your happiness. It's in this reclamation of power that true freedom and true satisfaction emerges. There is something undeniably powerful about mystery. It captivates, intrigues, and draws people in, often more effectively than words or declarations ever could. When you act like he never existed, when you stop over-explaining, overreacting, or revealing every thought and feeling, you create a space that is magnetic. It's not about playing games or manipulation. It's about embracing the fact that you are complex, independent, and whole on your own. Mystery is not the absence of presence, it's the presence of depth, the kind of depth that someone cannot fully grasp or control. And for someone who assumed they had insight into your emotions or influence over your reactions, that depth becomes irresistible, unsettling, and unforgettable. When someone has been accustomed to predictability, your constant availability, immediate responses, or emotional transparency, introducing mystery disrupts the status quo. Suddenly, they realize they do not fully understand you anymore. They may have thought they knew how to get a reaction, how to evoke a feeling, or how to maintain influence over your emotional state, but that certainty is gone. By remaining composed, selective in your engagement, and unattached to proving anything, you create a dynamic where they are drawn in not by what you show, but by what they sense is there beneath the surface. That tension, that curiosity, is magnetic in a way that confrontation or reaction could never be. Mystery also communicates value. When someone is overly available, there's an unconscious message that your attention is easily given, that your time and energy are abundant and unguarded. But when you hold back, when you are not immediately accessible, you convey the opposite, that your presence is precious, your attention is earned, and your life is full beyond their reach. This absence of predictability triggers reflection, questioning, and often desire. They begin to analyze interactions, replay moments, and wonder what they missed or misunderstood. You don't have to say a word to create this impact. Your calm, unshaken composure says it all. There is a psychological principle at work here. Humans are wired to be curious about what they cannot fully comprehend or control. When someone believes they understand you completely and suddenly encounters boundaries, subtle distance, or quiet independence, it forces them to reconsider. That uncertainty is magnetic. It pulls them in because it challenges their assumptions and triggers a desire to bridge the gap, to rediscover, or even to earn what they took for granted. By embracing mystery, you are not manipulating their emotions. You are simply allowing the natural consequences of self-respect and autonomy to play out. Mystery is also intimately connected to self-confidence. It requires that you trust yourself, your judgment, and your worth. You do not feel the need to explain every decision, justify every reaction, or seek validation for your choices. This confidence radiates in a way that is palpable and compelling. It is the quiet magnetism that comes from knowing you are whole, thriving, and unattainable on someone else's terms. And for someone who once assumed they had influence over your emotional world, that confidence is both humbling and disconcerting. Finally, embracing mystery allows you to focus on your life rather than on reactions, assumptions, or attempts to control outcomes. By creating space around yourself emotionally, mentally, and even physically, you draw energy back into your own experiences, goals, and growth. And the subtle irony is that while you are becoming richer, fuller, and more vibrant in your own life, the person who underestimated you is left captivated by what they cannot fully access. That pull, that curiosity, and that realization of missed opportunities is the quiet power of mystery, a power that is magnetic, transformative, and in many ways more effective than any overt display of emotion or confrontation could ever be. One of the most underestimated forces in relationships is peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from avoidance or indifference, but the kind that comes from true emotional mastery. The quiet, unshakable calm that arises when you refuse to let someone else dictate your feelings. There's a reason why peace is far more devastating to someone who underestimated or hurt you than any argument, confrontation, or angry outburst could ever be. Words can be dismissed, apologies can be ignored, and anger can be rationalized, but peace is undeniable. When you exist in a state of calm, thriving independently and refusing to chase validation, you are sending a message that cannot be misinterpreted. Your life, your happiness, and your emotional world are untouchable, and that is a pain he never expected. The irony of peace is that it's subtle. It doesn't yell, it doesn't demand attention, and it doesn't seek revenge. Instead, it creates a stark contrast between expectation and reality. Someone who assumed they could provoke a reaction, manipulate your feelings, or hold sway over your emotional state suddenly finds themselves confronted by a reality they cannot control. They may have anticipated anger, bitterness, or desperation, but what they encounter instead is composure, self-possession, and contentment. That calm, that inner stability, speaks volumes without needing explanation. It communicates that you are free, unshaken, and complete. And for someone who tried to occupy your center, that absence of turmoil is profoundly unsettling. True peace requires discipline. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending that hurt doesn't exist. It's about acknowledging the past, processing it internally, and choosing to no longer hand over power to someone else's mistakes. By maintaining calm and refusing to react, you reclaim control over your emotional state. You refuse to participate in the cycle of drama, disappointment, or expectation, and in doing so, you create a space that is both liberating for yourself and quietly painful for him. He may not understand it, and he may not even articulate it, but the truth is that your peace becomes a mirror reflecting everything he lost and failed to appreciate. There's also a psychological principle here. Humans are naturally affected by contrast. People who are used to provoking reactions, inciting emotional dependency, or eliciting attention are most impacted when that dynamic is removed. Your silence, your calm, and your unbothered state form a stark contrast to the chaos or manipulation he may have expected. That absence of drama, that refusal to be rattled, is more piercing than any words could ever be. He is left to face the consequences of his actions internally, reflecting on what he lost without the comfort of your reaction to soften the blow. Peace is also inherently attractive. It signals confidence, self-reliance, and emotional intelligence. When someone sees that you are thriving, unshaken, and engaged in your own growth, it highlights not only what they lost, but also what they can no longer influence. Your life is full, your happiness is independent, and your energy is your own. That quiet strength is magnetic, and at the same time, a source of reflection for anyone who assumed they could control or dictate your experience. It is a kind of subtle authority, one that commands respect without having to demand it. Finally, peace is transformative for you, not just for him. While he is left questioning, analyzing, or regretting, you are free to invest your energy where it matters: your goals, your friendships, your passions, and your growth. By centering yourself and refusing to be defined by someone else's actions, you create a life that is unshakable. And that, in its quiet, steady power, becomes a lesson he will feel more acutely than any confrontation could deliver. Your peace is the ultimate form of self-respect, the most profound demonstration of strength, and the pain he never saw coming. At the end of the day, the real power isn't in making him feel anything. It's in living your life fully on your own terms. When you act like he never existed, when you protect your peace, your happiness, and your growth, you show him what he lost without ever having to say a word. That is the kind of strength no one can take from you, and the kind of pain he never expected.